This episode is sponsored by the Twindle Foundation. Learn more at www.twindlefoundation.org.
Let's talk.
So many people stay hidden due to fear. Fear of judgment, shame, or even guilt. You are not alone on your journey. Girl, you are not alone. This is a safe place. A place to be heard, a place to be free, a place to be yourself. Bring your girlfriends and let's talk about it. Yeah, let's talk about it. Hey, Kyo, thank you so very much for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, thank you. I am so excited that you decided to join me on this live. I feel like this conversation or just being able to have conversation with women and just talking about things that we aren't able to share or openly talk about with our friends. You know, a lot of times people hide things or just ashamed to have conversation and be vulnerable and transparent because of, just the judgment or just people just taking things one way and then kind of running with it. So I'm so glad that I'm able to create a space that is a safe space so that we're able to just have conversation. I feel like I'm bridging the gap. So for those who don't know you, for the audience, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Takiyo Evans. I live in North Carolina, graduate of upstate. I won't say what class.
That's okay. That's absolutely okay. We're going to tell your age. That's okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But I am a mom of 3. And I think I'm at a stage in my life where I'm just trying to figure it out.
You know what? I think that, and I'm glad that you said that, because I think that no matter where you are in life, we're all still trying to figure it out, because there's always a starting point, and then there's going to be a stop sign at some point, and then, we transition it, but we're still trying to figure it out. You can be at the top of your career, but it's just a new level of it, and you're still trying to figure it out. Tell me about how is it like just being a mom of 3, and then just, pushing forward in your career and chasing after your dreams or the things that you want. How do you manage that? Or how have you managed that over the years?
Well, it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. It's a juggling act, trying to find balance between wanting to move forward in your career and still trying to maintain family time so that you're not missing out or having to choose between the two. It definitely has not been easy. Time management, where I'm really great at it as it pertains to my job. I struggle with it as far as making time for my family.
Yes. What you said was so key, just making time for your family and juggling. And you know what, since the pandemic, and I know before this, we've seen a lot of women go into, and not just women, a lot of people have left their jobs for those reasons, because they weren't able to juggle their time and spend time with their families, quality time, and missing those special events or just little things, with their families. And so there have been a lot of women that have gone on the path of entrepreneurship for those reasons. And during the pandemic, I've seen a lot. And then a lot on social media, but you've seen a lot of people just stepping out and just changing their direction and going into entrepreneurship because of that, because wanting to spend more time with their kids or their family. And then you see there has been like a increase in the divorce rate as well due to that type of stuff. Due to, the communication, like not being able to be there for their family, that type of stuff. So it does, going after a career it does affect, your family life. So
It does it, and for women, you really have to make a choice because a lot of times in society, when it comes to women in the workplace, it's always a question of, are you going to be able to handle this workload because you're a mom? It's really never centered around your capability. It's always, if they know that you're a parent, that always comes into play. Well, are you willing to relocate? But if you are, how can you do that if you're a mom? Or if this promotion is extended to you, how are you going to be able to perform because you're a mom? The expectation for women is a lot higher, I would say, it is for men when it comes to being able to balance family and work at the same time.
yes, you know what? I agree. And the craziest part is that women can juggle and balance that type of stuff. I would say better than a male, because you see those stay-at-home dads, and when they have to do, and some people are really good at it. Some males are really good at it, but they find that flexibility. They're able to put all that, say, handle it as well as a woman. But it is pretty tough, especially in a workplace when you know that you're capable or you're qualified for a job, and you're putting, it's either the exact same amount of effort or even more effort than a male, and you're still overlooked. And I think that part of that is just being a woman, saying, it's just like, even when our new VP Harris came into office, people question that because, women are emotional, and women can't handle this. You get all the backlash because she's a female, when women can handle just as much as a man. We can carry it all on our shoulders. Should we have to do that? Maybe not. But if it's our choice and we're qualified, then why can't we be seen as equal?
Mm-hmm.
So definitely that's definitely something to think about. Even in my own role, when I worked in corporate, it was tough for me. Well, actually, I didn't really. Well, I worked as a finance manager in the automotive industry, but it was a struggle for me because I was fighting a male for a job position. It was a male-dominated field, and it was just like I was always being judged, and not by my performance. It was always, there was something negative about, well, she has an attitude, or she doesn't listen, or she's not going to. Or in one time, I heard someone said that one of my managers said that because I was a Black female, that no one was going to hire me for the job position. It wasn't the fact that I couldn't do the job. It was just the fact that I was a Black female, and you don't see Black females in those positions. And then, what, I just realized that it was just something in the area that I was working, because when I went to finance school, there were many women in my class. And when I went out of state, and when I went out of state and I started just looking around in different places, I saw recently, when I purchased a vehicle, the dealership, that they were all women. The sales manager was a woman. The finance manager was a woman. And I was just like, kudos to this dealership for placing women into these positions, because I knew that was a struggle for me. I was very shocked to see women straight across the board, but I was excited as well, too, because that just showed me that it was just where I was, saying? It was just here, and maybe it's not like that everywhere. So that just opened me up and allowed me to see it in a different perspective of it, because I feel like sometimes we're being held back, and knowing that that we're qualified, but someone disqualifies us just because of our gender.
Automatically.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. And I really think that the pandemic had a lot to do with what you were talking about, seeing, women across the board performing in positions where it's typically male dominated. I think that diversity and inclusion has become more of a forefront here recently, due to the pandemic, and a lot of realizations are taking place, especially since the people, quote unquote, really have the power as far as how these organizations move and how they work and whether or not they're going to survive. And I think they really have started to take a look at and see that, okay, well, we have to start really making some moves and maybe start putting women in places where they really haven't been before. The pandemic, along with, our new vice president and all of these new, I guess, glass ceilings that are being broken,
Yes.
Especially with women of color, creating opportunities for the rest of us to move forward. I think all of these changes kind of play a role in kind of what that's going to look like going forward. I hope, even for us in the working class, that it's going to allow us to make those moves as well, and not really have a bias against us just because we are women and because we might have all of these roles, including parenthood and, just being able to handle the tasks that have been presented before us. I think that's important. And I really think that people are really taking heed to that. So, I mean, it's exciting to see kind of where we're going to go.
Yes. Yes, it is. I think it's very exciting. And you know what? There's something else that for me, I remember when I was starting my career in management, like it was so tough for me, even after once I got to that position, it was still like, okay, fine, I'm here now. But then there was still that fear of the eyes being on your back, because not only are people, I don't want to say jealous, but that people felt like you didn't deserve to be in that position. And so there were people that were trying to sabotage, or people that were waiting for me to fail. And it's just like, I felt like I had something to prove. And I'm telling you, that's taxing and exhausting when you feel like you have to prove yourself constantly because someone feels like you're not enough or you're not deserving. And I remember once that someone said that to me, that I was only a high-paid secretary. A high-paid secretary. I was so offended by that statement. And actually it was a Caucasian gentleman that said it. And honestly, he was an older guy. So I think it was just the mindset of the person or whatever. And it's just like, you know what? But in those situations, you have to take the high road, and just brush it off your shoulder and keep going, because there's always going to be someone that thinks that you're not deserving, or you're not qualified, or you're not worthy of that position, or you shouldn't make that type of money. And the worst part is that the other person may make as much money, but how do you dictate? How do you tell someone what their value is, what they deserve? That type of stuff. That was like it, when I was in that position and fighting for that position. It was so hard, and there were some days that it tore me apart. Like it messed with my mental state, just having to deal with that, and then just coming home and then having to do it all over again. And it just made me think, is it really worth it? And that's just something that I've always questioned myself, as far as in my career, or my career path. When I make those choices, as far as when I'm chasing after something, I have to ask myself, what does that look like for you? And is it worth it?
Mm-hmm.
And so what about yourself? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to fight for a position, or even question your choices as far as your career path and the things that you had to sacrifice to get there? In the end, is it really worth it to you? Or was it really worth it to you?
Absolutely. I've definitely been in that position, not too long ago. So I do training. So I was a training manager for a company I had been with for 14 years. And a lot of changes had taken place. And our management team really was primarily African American management team. And so a lot of changes took place, and the demographic started to change quite a bit. So it went from primarily an African-American management team to an all-white management team. And the encounter that I had with some of upper management was, if I give you this job, are you going to be able to do the work? That was the question. But prior to that, it was, your reputation precedes you. I've heard all about you. I've done the research on you. I've talked to some of your colleagues, and my response to that was, well, if you've talked to them, then you know.
Right.
And so you know the work. You've looked at the numbers. You've talked to others to correspond what you see. To correlate what you see. And so therefore, I really don't understand what the hesitation was, because there was nobody else who wanted the position. Nobody else wanted it.
Well, wait a minute. Was it a new position, or it was just new management coming in, taking over, and they were questioning your ability to do the job?
It was a new, the position. So there were a lot of changes. Okay. And so with these changes, a position became available in my area.
Okay.
And realistically, I had already been doing the work. And so naturally, from the past, there was a promotion from within. So I was technically next in line for the promotion. Mm-hmm. There was no one else really that would have transitioned into the position from within the company. The only other option would have been to bring someone from outside. And you know how nepotism works.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's what had already started to take place. And so I had talked with the new regional director. He wanted to do an interview, and he said a few things to me that kind of opened my eyes, kind of made me come to the realization that really maybe what I was chasing wasn't really, like you said, worth it in the end. He told me that he didn't care about my education. He told me that he didn't care about what I had done before in the past, because the past doesn't dictate what I'm going to do in the future. And it really kind of took me back and made me come to the realization, well, maybe this isn't the place for me.
Right.
You know, maybe my time and my efforts really hasn't been appreciated. Maybe was placed here because I can do the job, and it's just easy for them to have me here. And if I was to be promoted, then maybe it would be too much pushback. Maybe I wouldn't go along as easily with what they wanted me to go along with. You know, and I had a lady ask me, an auditor had come in, and she asked me, well, what are your hopes? Like, what are your hopes? What do you want to do next? And she was like, don't you want to be promoted? And in that moment, something hit me, and I said, I've been with this company for 14 years. I said, and I have had to wait for someone to give me something that I know I should have already had. I've been told that I've been capable. I've been told that my work is admirable. I've been told that if anybody can do it, you can. And after you hear that X amount of times and you know it for yourself, and then the people who have control over putting you in that place or allowing that to happen are telling you you can do it, but they are also consciously not placing you in that position or not giving it to you.
Yes.
And so I really started to think that maybe all of the time and effort that I have put into this work and the time that I miss with my kids and their activities, maybe it wasn't worth it because I missed out on a lot.
Yes.
I missed out on a lot because I was running in behind, trying to get this promotion. And in the end, they really didn't want to give it to me, even though I was more than qualified for the position. I had been working in the position without the title for years prior. So
he was doing the job for free.
Exactly. Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. And when I decided to not do that anymore, then it was, well, just let me move you here in this position and let me see if I can do this. And I just had to decide, it's really not worth it at the end of the day. Because I am a person. And
at some point you feel like you're just chasing a rabbit. Yeah. At some point you feel like
I had to let it go.
Yeah, you're just chasing a rabbit because if someone's dangling something in your face, kind of reminds you of that commercial with the guy with the dollar on the thing. He says, "Oh, you got to be quicker than that." And that's exactly what they do. They dangle positions and they dangle money into your face, and then you start to chase after because whatever it is that you want, you start to chase after it, and then you start to believe that you can do it, and then you get knocked down and you get back up because that's what we're taught. Get back up and go after it. One setback doesn't stop anything, just keep going. But then it's just like, when do you stop and realize like, oh, wait a second, you know what I'm saying? I bring just as much to the table. A lot of times we look at jobs and we think, these people are, well, they have everything to offer, but what about you? Because you don't walk in there with just nothing. You know what I'm saying? You have something that is of value for them as well, too. You know what I'm saying? You're an asset. And a lot of times we don't see that in ourselves. We just feel like they're superior. The company is superior. You know what I'm saying? It's and it's not. We don't see our value and our worth. And when we start bringing that to the table and making people realize that, hey, I have something to offer this company. And listen, if you don't see the value in me, then there's X, Y, and Z company right up the street that will see the value in me, who would love to have me on the team. But a lot of times we don't present ourselves like that. We just go in and hope that we get the job, hope that we're seen, hope that we're appreciated, hope that we're enough, when all along we've always been enough. We've always been enough. We've always gone into places and we've excelled. You know what I'm saying? We rise above. We bring community. We lift the morale into a place. Every job that I've been in, I don't want to say this, but it always circled around me. And when I was having a bad day, they always having a bad day. Not that I forced that upon them, but I was always told that whenever I'm having a bad day, everybody else does, because I'm always lifting everyone else up. And so it's just like, hold on a second, you don't see that, because we just, I just hate that for us, and especially for women as well too, because we need to stand up for ourselves. We need to speak up. We need to see our own value and worth or whatever, and not allowing someone else to dictate what that looks like or what it is. So you know what? And the other part is that what I wanted to ask was, how did you process that? How did you process that experience? Because a lot of times we don't.
I held on to it. I think I'm still holding on to it.
But for what reason? For what reason do you?
Because you feel like you dedicate so much and you give so much, and it's a part of who you are.
Yep.
And you hold on to it with everything that you have. Like,
there's
you really hold on to it.
Like a soul tie. There's a tie to it. 14 years.
Absolutely.
When you think about it, you know your job in and out. You know what I'm saying? You know what it's supposed to look like. You know how things are supposed to progress, how things are supposed to be processed. You know what needs to be done without someone telling you. At this point, you feel like, oh, I'm a badass, at this position. Now I can train other people up to come, behind me and do whatever. And, people like that kind of stuff until you rock the boat a little bit. But the thing is that you become comfortable. You become comfortable in your salary. You know exactly every week or every bi-weekly or monthly, you know exactly how much money that you're going to make. That was how it was for me. Every month I knew that I was going to make X amount of dollars. I even knew I was at a place where I even knew the months that I was that I would have lower months. Like some months I may, and then some months I knew that it was going to be, I knew my 2 bad months in a year. So, so you're comfortable because you know what your money is going to look like. You know what you can bring home to your family. You know how you're going to live. You know what kind of lifestyle that you're going to take. You just become so comfortable in that position. And actually, you just stop growing because you stop challenging yourself. You stop pushing yourself, and that's the part that really, when I got to a point where I knew that I was exhausted with the job position, and I chased that job for so long. When I started in the automotive industry, I remember someone told me that our finance manager at that particular store, was making $120,000. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. That's the job that I want. That's the position that I want. And it took me so long and so much of a beat down. And that it broke my spirit. But why did I allow that to happen? And why did I put myself through that? And even
I'm sorry, I hate to cut you off. No, but you made that statement. Why did I do that? And I thought instantly about our parents. Our parents have been, I would say, have the mindset that you go to a job and you stay to a job no matter what. You don't leave that job until you retire from that job. And so I think, honestly, that we have been trained to endure whatever.
Yes.
No matter what, in order to hold on to or obtain or I hate to say it, just move beyond from where our parents were.
Yes.
And my mom would always say, because you are a girl and because you are a brown girl, you have to work harder than your counterpart, and you have to do more than your counterpart, and you have to do it without complaining, and you have to do it without riffling the waters, and you're going to have to do it for the rest of your life. And so it's a trained mindset. It was for me until recently, and it was almost like I had to be put out for me to really come to the realization that this was not the place for me. And there's more for me out there besides running in behind what I thought I wanted. When my reality is this, it's nothing like what I wanted.
Wow. You know what? That is so good and you're so right. And the thing is that I think that there's a generation this has started a little bit before our time, but people just started to realize that this is not it and that you don't have to stay, because a lot of times, and especially when you interview for jobs, they look for that longevity. They want to see people in the job, but then when they see people moving around, they says, oh, this person is a job hopper. But the thing is that they don't want to hire you because because they think that you're just going to leave and go someplace else. When the other side of this is that if they're not giving you what it is that you need, then why are you still there? And a lot of people just start to see that, because you can go somewhere, work a few years, and you see this even in high corporate jobs like accounting and stuff, because some people, they work for an accounting firm, and then they get what they need to get from them, and then they move on, because that's how they build themselves. If you know that you're not going to get where you want to be or everything that you need, then you need to move on to the next place and pull to in order for you to gather everything that's going to get you to that point in life. But the thing is, for me, is that in the very beginning of my career, I honestly was just chasing money. That was it. Just like I said, when I heard that finance manager was making $120,000, and I was just like, I never really just stopped and just think about what it took in order for me to make that money. The long hours, the discrimination, the racism, people not wanting to work with me. I remember this elderly Caucasian guy stating that he did not want to work with me because I was Black. And that thing tore me up inside. I remember a Caucasian guy stood up over me because he didn't understand something that I explained to him, and he was upset, and he stood over me and he started screaming in the middle of the showroom floor. And I was so embarrassed. And my manager came out, and at that time he left, but it was more of people just saying, it's okay, just keep going, that type of stuff, not even being able to process. And it's almost like the customer's money was more important than me. And that took a toll on me. And I honestly, I didn't process it, because they always said, when you're an entrepreneur or when you work in sales and stuff, you got to have thick skin. But honestly, I one day I just told myself, I don't want to have thick skin anymore. Because no man wants a woman with thick skin, because you know what happens? You take that thick skin, that attitude, and everything else that someone has done to you, poured inside of you, and then you know what? You bleed that out in that relationship. You do. Because for me, I started to look at men in a different way. More of, you're not going to talk to me like that. Don't raise your voice at me. You know what I'm saying? It made me feel like I had to protect myself, because of what somebody else did to me. And I had to realize that is not how I want to live my life. And also, that's not a soft version of what a woman should be like. Now, I'm not saying that a woman shouldn't be strong, because I know that I'm a strong person, but I don't have to have my defense up, or I don't have to overreact or just react. I think that I could express myself in a way that it could come across in a softer version of myself, versus feeling like I have to rise up to someone and defend myself, or not even just to defend myself, or just to show that maybe I was just trying to prove myself, or just, you're not going to talk to me like that, that type of stuff, because I didn't deal with what I went through on the job. And all of that really stemmed from going through things that I didn't deal with and just chasing after the wrong thing. Yeah, that was a definite process that I had to learn. So, and then I heard this from Dr. Miles Monroe. He said, whatever it is you chase, you'll have to continue to chase it, because it'll keep running from you. And every dollar that you chase, and I see people do this all the time. They're talking about working all these overtime, and it's just like, but you're chasing that money, and then what happens the next week? You have to go back and do the exact same thing again, and life passes you by, and you go, whoa, wait a minute, what happened? It's 20 years later, and what have I accomplished? And now you have to start, and if you do start over, now you have to deal with all of the mess that you hadn't dealt with before, because you just keep going. You just keep going. You don't stop. You know what I'm saying? You just keep going. That's what I did. I kept going.
Well, we've been conditioned to keep going. And I think a lot, one thing that I can appreciate about the pandemic is the ability for us, or just people in general, to be able to take a step back and really see what's important and really make a decision for themselves, not surrounded around, what they have to do for other people or anything of that nature, but just for themselves, and realize that, hey, there is something more than going into this job every day and sacrificing who I am as a person and having to do the code switching and not really be my true authentic self, and being concerned that if I am, what's going to happen as a result of that, or how will I be treated, or will I be looked at as the aggressive Black woman, in the office, or
we get that a lot. We get that a lot.
Yeah. And so a lot of people have had the ability to kind of take a step back and say, hey, I don't have to run in behind that anymore. I don't have to do that anymore. I'm really going to take a chance on myself, find out who I am as a person, and really run toward my purpose. Like, that's for me in this season of transition. My dream is to find my purpose.
Yes, that is so good.
So that's what I'm running toward. I'm running toward my purpose, and I'm really running toward it very centered. And I'm really looking for what's going to benefit my ultimate goal, and that's peace of mind. Yes. So whatever it is that I have to do, if peace of mind is not the center of it, if I can't have peace of mind, if my peace of mind is going to be shifted, if it's going to cause a break in my peace of mind, I can't do it.
Yes, I think and I don't know if this comes with age, but at a certain point in life, we start to reevaluate our lives and our decisions, and start to go towards the things that we value more, and definitely value ourselves more. And you know what? I don't know. I think that the pandemic made us, because I don't think that if it had not been for the pandemic, I don't think that society would have slowed down. I don't think that people would have actually look themselves in the mirror and be disgusted by what they actually saw, because everything slowed down. And then you could, because of course in our stillness is when we're able to hear from God. And I think that the world slowed down, and we started to hear from God. We started to see the ugly. We started to deal with the things that we didn't want to deal with, that we actually had to do. We had no choice. It was now like, okay, let's take a look in the mirror, and a lot of people were working from home, and they started to see something totally different. I've even seen people, I've seen posts on social media where people were saying that, since the pandemic, they've actually had time to process a lot of things. They had time to make changes in their finances, which people probably would have never done that, because they were so used to doing things a certain way. So it made them start to see things a little bit differently. They started looking at their health a little bit differently, because now they're not eating out as much. They started looking at their finances differently, because now they're not spending as much. They're not running out to buy lunch. They're not having to put money into gas. They're not having to pay for parking, that type of stuff. There's no place that was open. So they're not spending money on those extra expenses, on their lifestyle, that type of stuff. And then when they started seeing those changes, it was probably like, okay, things are different. Like I needed to make those changes, Then the people that they were dating, they may have saw that, hey, this person didn't have time for me. I was just busy and didn't realize that this person was self-centered or was doing this. It just made us stop and look at everything that was actually going on, because we were just running around too busy. And I remember when I was growing up, my aunt used to say, people are in a hurry and going nowhere. And I'll be like, yes, I know, right? That was pretty deep. That was deep. She said, don't be in a hurry and you're not going anywhere. And I was just like, man. And so listen, those little things that they tell you when you're younger, it sticks with you, because that's exactly how we were living our lives. A fast pace. We wanted everything fast and quick. We wanted all to come to us. We were just rushing, and we should have been patiently waiting for our next turn, even for those job positions. I could have been patiently waiting for whatever it is to come, versus trying to fight someone else for a position. And then when I got it, it was just like, maybe God would have showed me that it wasn't worth it. Maybe he would have showed me that there was more for me had I stopped, and I think that I had plenty of outs, because there were so many people that came to me and said, hey, listen, maybe you should do this, or maybe you should do that, because this might be a better environment. And I said, no, you know what? I think I'm going to just try this, because I just got promoted, and saying I wanted to see what I could do. Honestly, it was just about the money. That's all it was.
Yeah.
And then why was that? It wasn't even, I didn't feel like it was success or accomplishment. Nope. It was just being able to live the life and the lifestyle that I wanted to, and that was the biggest part. And I think that God just opened up and showed me that regardless of what, because I always prided myself doing things a certain type of way, like having, good credit, that type of stuff, and paying my bills on time, and doing this or whatever, like just obsessed with those things, and then maybe I felt like it was me. And then I came to realize that if it all fell apart, and it did all fall apart, that I was able to still pick myself up and move forward and still be good. Like a lot of times we just hear what people say and how to live and do this and that. And it's just like, none of that stuff really matters. And that's the biggest part that I took away. That was one big learning lesson during the pandemic. None of that stuff that we believe matters. None of that stuff is important. It isn't. We push forward so much into nothing.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think it's hard initially when you come to that realization, it's hard to really understand what it means.
Yeah.
It's hard. And when it happened to me, when I when my job ended, honestly, like I was saying, I feel like I'm still holding on to the idea of having it. And honestly, it's a grieving process. It's been like grief for me to move on from that stage of my life. I know that it was necessary. And I understand that it had to happen because I cannot go where I need to go had I still been in that place.
Yes.
My mindset would still be the same. My state of mind would still be the same if I was in that place still. And so I had to be removed from that place. And it's hard when you leave something. It's no different than when, I wouldn't dare equate losing a job to the grief that people experience when they lose a loved one, but the steps are similar.
It is. You have to process it the exact same way, because first you have to accept it, come to realization, and then you have to accept it, and then you have to get to a point on that curve of where you have to find forgiveness in yourself, because a lot of things start to play in your head once you come to acceptance and like, okay, this part of my life is over. What do I do now? And then you have to forgive yourself, because all those years that you put into it, there's some things that you swept under the rugs. There's going to be some things that you wish that you didn't do, or you wish that you had done differently, or the fact that you may have sacrificed your family time or whatever it is that you sacrifice. So you have to forgive yourself, and forgive yourself for allowing it to go on as long as you did. Forgive yourself for holding on. Forgive yourself for not standing up for yourself. Forgive yourself. Just forgive for whatever reason. You still have to forgive. So even when anything ends, if it's a life, if it's a relationship, if it's a job, you still have to grieve, and you still have to go through that grieving process. It might not be the same, but that pain is still there, and you still got to process it. You still got to process it. You still got to let it go. And that was hard for me too. When I lost my job, I didn't know what I was going to do. At first, I had no emotions, and then it was just like, okay, what do I do, God? Because I wasn't ready for this. Like there was no indication, there was no plans, no nothing. And I was in a bitter state, and didn't realize that I was in a bitter state either. It was just more of, I was just like, okay, I'm going to come to terms with this and I'm going to be okay. But there are some times that I wasn't okay. And even when I thought that I was okay, God showed me that I still wasn't okay, because I felt like the people that did me wrong, or the people that tried to cause harm to me, I felt like in my mind, I thought that I had forgiven the situation and walked away. But then I was at a place where I felt like, you know what? Like a lot of times people say, oh, unjust won't prosper. And don't worry, that person's going to get theirs back. And you know what? I was waiting for that moment
For that to
hear that they've gotten theirs back, you know? And I was just like, and that's when the Holy Spirit was just like, you're not healed. You haven't forgiven this situation. I was like, how? And there's just, if you got to sit and wait for someone's downfall, then no, you're not healed. Like you haven't grieved, you haven't gotten through the process. And then I had to go back and find forgiveness and walk away, because the beauty of it is, no matter, and I always go through saying, no matter what happens to us, it happens for our good. Like, you know, something good is going to come out of anything. So I had to look at it as it was a seed sown. And had I not gone through that process, even though that thing was so long, drawn out, I ended up in a whole legal situation afterwards. It was really bad. It was really bad. And honestly, I felt like I probably shouldn't have gone through that second half of it, not letting go. And then the whole outcome of it. And then people were just taking jabs at me and just saying ugly things. So I was getting a second round of a beat down, and it was just putting a lot of pressure on me. And I just felt like, you know what? Was it even worth it? But all things are working for our good. And had I not went through all of that, I don't think that I would have never seen the beauty of what I was capable of, or what God would have brought forth from me. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times we feel like when we let go of something, you know, that a lot of times we feel like when we let go, there's nothing else, or where do I pick myself up? But when we trust God and place our hands into his hands, there's something greater that is in front of us, if we could just be able to see it. And I had to let go of that negativity. And you know what? I when I did finally let go and not wait for those people downfall, I started to see something beautiful. God has something waiting for me. It was still a process, but I had to learn to trust God in all situations in order for me to get there. And I feel like I finally found a life of freedom that I was looking for, a life of purpose. I discovered something new. I discovered something new in me. I started something that I didn't even know that I was capable of. And I felt like God just wanted to get me to that place. And I do think that even with the legal battle and all of that type of stuff, it gave me strength. Even though it was ugly, I feel like I stood up for myself. I had some moments in there, some moments where I got to take some jabs at some people. Probably was bad, but I had some moments in there where, you know, I probably, when I look at it, and there's still some times where I still feel like I got a little bit more I like to say to them. And I was like, no, you don't need to say that to them. People, leave those folks alone. But it's, like that's over with, you know, and you're in a good place, and you're in a really good place. And now I'm in a place where that I could help other people. So sometimes when we lose things, or when things are let go, it's just, this season is over with. And we have to understand and accept that the season is over with. And that we have to trust and know that God has a plan for us. And he knows exactly where we need to be and when we need to be there. He's not going to leave us. He's not going to just leave us there like high and dry and no job or no purpose or nothing like that. We just have to trust that whatever's next is, you know, it's of God, and that he's going to guide us.
I agree. It's all it has all been a time of preparation.
Yes.
Honestly, you know, when you look back over, you know, a lot of the things that you have done in your past, and you kind of think back and you say, well, Lord, why did I have to go through this? Or why did I have to experience this? Or why did this happen the way that it happened? It's all just to create who you need to be when your transition does start and come up to the place where it's time for you to move forward. So
push into that next season.
I appreciate the transition. I may not have been open to it initially, but it's definitely time is of the essence kind of thing. You know, the timing was perfect. So,
you know what I think, and one other thing that I felt like I saw, like there were so many things that I could have done differently in my life over periods of time or whatever. And I felt like I felt like I had to get to a place where I needed to see that what I'd done over the years wasn't always, everything wasn't right. Like, you know what I'm saying? I picked up habits and traits and different things, you know, as I was growing up, because a lot of things in business and the way my perspective and mindset of things was what I was taught or what I grasped from other people, or, you know, saying social media, the world, just people tell. And I think that all of that stuff had to be dismantled in order for me to find my true identity, in order for me to move forward. So I think there was a lot of gutting to bring out the bad so that God could pour into me so that I could become a light. And so I think the big part, this is scripture in the Bible, and it just talks about pouring new wine into old wineskin. You can't pour new wine into old wineskin. And so it was just like there was something new, but that God was pouring into me, but he couldn't put it into that old because it was toxic. It was contaminated. That like I needed to regurgitate. He needed to get all of that out of me, so that he could pour into me what he needed for me to carry. Oh gosh, so that he could pour into me what he needed me to carry into the next season. It was almost, and I felt this in my spirit when I said that's whatever I was carrying was so sacred and need to be pure, and whatever was in me was so toxic, God couldn't mix the two. So I needed God to clean me up so that whatever it is that I need to carry would be ready and available when I arrive in that next season. And that was a word. That really was a word. That was for me. That was because I never saw it in that way before. So yeah. Thank God for the changes and just being able to, even though it was hard to push and walk away from it, but you know, he knows what's best for us. He does.
He has a way of putting it in perspective for you. Sometimes, you know how we kind of get caught up in our walk, and we walking our walk, and we just are walking it because we can walk it, and we've been walking it for a while. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes he kind of alters that path that we've been on so that we can really see it and understand what his perspective is. Sometimes, you know, we get caught up in our own little thing and kind of try to make it what we want it to be. Like you said, chasing after that dream, or chasing in behind that promotion, or chasing in behind that money, when in reality, that's not what we were even set up to do to begin with. You know, we may have been put in these positions to do these things, but we were put there, you know, to learn and to prepare for whatever our next step in life would be. So, you know, it was hard to get or to let go. But the reality is, it's a lot of good on the other side. You just got to be patient enough and willing to, you know, get off of what you say your path is and get on to what God's path is so that you can see it. So,
yep. Trust the process. That's the biggest part. And that was one thing that in my process, I made a promise to God that I was done chasing whatever. And that I was going to learn to trust him blindly with my eyes closed. And so what that looked like for me, it was devastating. No, I'm just kidding. It was so hard. It was so hard because I had never been like, I've always felt like I was a woman of faith. Like, you know, I trust God or whatever, but I was on a different level of trust. Now this time is, God, I'm going to place my hands in your hand. I'm going to close my eyes and know that you're going to guide me. And I've never given myself like that. Like I've never trusted him in that type of way, not knowing what was ahead of me. Like, you know how I said before, how you know how much money you're going to make every single month. You know what your check's going to look like. I knew exactly when I was going to have those bad months. So I was able to prepare. There was no preparation. And that was one of the biggest challenges for me when I told God yes, and that I was going to trust him on that level, because I didn't know what was next for me. I didn't know how I was going to get from A to B to Z. I just knew that God was going to get me there, that he was never going to leave nor forsake me, and that he was with me, even if I didn't hear or understand that he was with me. And so there was this verse in Tasha calls Leonard's song, and she says, you know my name, and she says, God, you know me, and I trust you with my life. And I had to tell myself that literally every single day, especially I was getting slapped and knocked down. And it was just like there was so much pressure, and I had no clue what. And I felt like, when is this going to end? But I felt like it was a season of persecution, like a season of persecution and refinement. And I felt like I had to go through that, but it was just so hard, just understanding how long is this going to take. And even still, like, I feel like a little ease, but I still see there's something greater going on around me, even though I still don't understand or know, but I just know that that God is leading me somewhere, and I just have to trust and know that wherever it is, it's going to be good for me. Like, I feel like there's and I feel like everything that I've been through, like, God is going to, like, I've lost nothing. I've lost nothing. I feel like everything, I always feel like a lose is a win. So I've never lost. I've always win. I feel like I'm victorious, because anything that's taken is, anything that's taken is a seed sown. So if I had a job and that job paid me $150,000 a year, right? And I lost my job. Well, I didn't lose my job. I just sold that $150,000 back. And that $150,000 is going to come back to me. So whatever it is that I let go of, I didn't lose it. I let it go so that it could come back to me. And when it comes back, it's going to come back multiplied. So I feel like anything that's taken away, it's going to come back. It's just you releasing it and letting it go. And I had to learn to let it go freely so that it could come back to me multiplied. That's how I started to see the beauty in those bad situations. So, you know what? I didn't lose, and I'm just like, I'm in a good place, and God is opening doors, and I'm starting to see things that I've never thought could happen, or I never saw myself in this type of position. And now I think, gosh, why didn't I just do this a long time ago?
Weren't supposed to.
I know it, yes, but I wish I did.
You weren't prepared for that. You weren't ready for that yet.
Yep, you're right. There was my season of preparation. God definitely had to prepare me, though. He did. And it's so funny.
It was rough too.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. It was so funny, because it's just like, I lost my thought what I was going to say, but it was a rough season. It definitely was a rough season. Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the unspoken thing about it is we all experience this. And just like you said initially in your intro, that a lot of people just don't feel comfortable enough to talk about it, or it's kind of like a stigma associated with it, I guess. I don't know. But it's good that, it's been brought to the light so that people can realize that, it can be different. And different is not bad. And it's okay if your priorities change in the middle of whatever it is that you're going through or experiencing. It's okay if you decide that I don't want to do it. Like, this is not going to work for me. It's okay to say no. And it's okay to reroute yourself.
You know how many people that are ashamed or embarrassed because they lost their job? And it's like, I don't know why, but it feels like I guess you just feel like a failure, or I let people down, or the people that were counting on me. Well, you know what? I just feel like it was hard for me to say that I lost my job, but at the same time, just having this conversation, it has become easy to say, girl, I lost my job too. You know what I'm saying? Because it was nothing. Like, it doesn't define who I am just because I lost my job. And it doesn't mean that. And I think it's more of because of the fact that people say that African Americans are lazy. And I actually heard that. I remember sitting inside of a hearing, and this attorney, she tried to say that I didn't do my job and I didn't show up like I was. My boss was sending us a text message at 5 a.m. I didn't have to be to work till 8:30. And he was sending a text message at 5 a.m. I was up at 5 a.m. because I worked out at early in the morning time. But he would send a list of stuff that needed to be done. First of all, you cross the line. There's no boundaries. Why are you sending me a message at 5 a.m.? And then I would have to work. We closed at 7. I worked until 11 p.m. Because we have late. Because what do you mean that So she expected me. So she said that I could have came into work a little earlier to do some of my paperwork. Well, I stayed at work a little later, and so it was just like, it's so hard to hear someone says that you're not enough. That was that's all that I heard,
Yeah.
And so that was the part that was at that time, I was struggling myself, because I was in a place where I felt like I wasn't enough. And so when she hit me with that, like, it made me feel some type of way. It made me put my defenses up as well too. And I felt like, you know what, I need to let her have it, but something, it was so bad. It was so bad because sometimes I become a little disrespectful, especially when I feel like I'm not being respected. I don't care what your title is. I feel like you're not going to talk to me like that. But I'm getting better with that. It's just like, take the high road and just ignore
one day at a time.
What people are saying, it doesn't matter. That's not who you are. It doesn't. She doesn't even know who she is. So I had to let that part go. But it was tough for me just hearing that, because no matter what you do, I felt like it was never good enough. So that was the biggest part for me. Just the embarrassment of it, the shame, the hurt, and just hearing someone says that I wasn't enough, like, and I didn't do enough when I knew that I did more than enough. And it was just the complications of it all. And so just for someone who's listening to this, or hear this story, or hear my story, hear your story, you know what? It's okay if you lose your job, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just the season ended, and you just have to know when to let go of it. And a lot of times we don't know when to let go of it because we're comfortable, and then God shakes things up, and then he forces us to let go. Because I had been praying and asking God to move into something different. But then I had got that raise. You see, we're going back to money again. I got that raise. And that's what I said. I said, because I was operating on my own will. And I said, you know what, gosh, I could pay off these bills. I could put back the money that I spent for the down payment of a house, because I had just bought a house. I had just bought a brand new car right afterwards, 2 days after I bought that house. And so I was just like, and I bought some new furniture and all kind of stuff. So it was just like, I can replenish what I spent. And I had already calculated in my head exactly this is going to be good. And then I was like, oh no, so there was a different plan that I was not. I had a plan and he had a plan. And it seems like his plan won. That's how that went.
Yeah, I agree. And two, you allowed yourself, and even me too as well, to be defined by others, or by the things, or by the funds. We were defined by our jobs and all of the things that came along with it. That was who we were. And so when God started to separate us from that, it looks a lot different.
Yeah. I mean, well, listen, there were some perks and stuff. Like, I'm going to tell you, I had courtside basketball seats, seats to basketball games. I mean, dinners. I mean, like $300 meals, like whatever you want. It was okay. The expenses, there was parties, there's all kinds of stuff. So when you think about that lifestyle, and then it's easy to say, I want to stay in here a little longer. But the thing is that, is it really worth it? No, it's not,
It's not.
It's not.
Really not.
So yeah. So I guess it was, my eyes were just blinded by, oh my gosh. So blinded by the shiny things, and the craziest part is that God has so much more, unlimited. Like when you say yes to him, he could give me all of those things multiplied. He could give me a box at the Bilo Center and anything, and I can have season tickets to the basketball games courtside. Didn't even, think about that, because my thinking wasn't there. Like I never thought that I could, but just seeing those things. And I really feel like God shows us things because he's telling you that I can get you to that level. This is not the last of it. But I wasn't seeing it. I wasn't seeing it like that. But you know what? It's all behind me. And I thank God that even though the things that I experienced, the good and the bad, that, I'm still able to move forward and just, trust him and know that there's more good ahead of me. I just feel like God would not withhold anything of good from me. So I know that there's going to be a lot more good days and a lot more courtside seats.
Yeah.
He knows what I love. So yes. And I just sold them seats back so that it can multiply. So I can get a lot of them.
So you can get, get back to Boston.
Yes, that's exactly right. Kyo, I thank you so very much for joining me in this conversation. It means the world to me because I feel like we're bridging the gap. I always feel like the little things that I do, it's a small part of something big that God is doing in the earth. And I feel like that's what this is, this message. I feel like we're bridging the gap and allowing people to be able to become transparent and vulnerable and share their story and not feel judged. I feel like I'm creating a safe space where women could be able to come and share and open up and talk about the things that they've gone through, to be able to process in that moment some things and even have relatable stories, because I felt like in my own life, I didn't have anyone to talk to. I was always the one that shared and opened up and become very vulnerable and naked and not ashamed. And then people around me were always trying to give me some advice and to never opened up, never shared nothing or whatever. And I felt like I was out there by myself. And at one point I felt like I was a problem. And I didn't even want to share anymore because I thought that I was the only one that was going through things. And it's so hard when you're the only one, like, hey, I'm the only one talking. Maybe something's wrong with me. And that's how I felt. And then I just realized that people are covering everything up. People are covering things up, their pain, their shame, their guilt, and not processing and not speaking out about it. And I just wanted to be a voice to say that it's okay, that it's not okay. And it's okay for you to open up and share. It's okay for you to let your story be heard. And I feel like that's what we're doing. We're talking about it.
Opening the door.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you again so very much for joining me and being vulnerable, stepping out of your comfort zone and opening up and sharing. Opening up and sharing and not allowing fear to hold you back. And a lot of times fear does hold people back from trying new things and stepping out. So again, thank you so very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to step out of my box a little bit and to be okay with it. I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Continue to process everything that you've gone through. Write it down, journal. I'm a true believer in journaling. I even sometimes just journal and just express to God how I feel about moments or how I feel in that during the day or just anything. Like I feel like I want to be heard. I need to be heard. And God, I need you to listen. And I feel like I have to take that time, carve that time out of my life, my schedule, and speak to God. But I also know that I need to reserve time to hear from God. And I feel like I do that in my quietness. So sometimes when I have a lot of stuff going on in my head, I take a nap. And when I wake up, and I feel like maybe it cleanses my energy or whatever it is that's going on, but then I can hear God speak. And so I feel like I have to carve that time out and you do that however you feel is necessary. For me, when I lost my job, I would get up every morning like clockwork, same time. Or even if I had something else to do, I always still made that time. I would not skip it. 5 days a week, I would walk 3 miles and I spent that time with God. It was 28 degrees. It was raining. I put on a raincoat. It didn't matter because I felt like I needed that time with God. I needed to be able to process what I was going. I needed to talk about what I was feeling because I didn't have anyone else to talk about or anyone else I felt like understood. And so I took that time out for me and God. I just felt like it was, and I remember the Holy Spirit saying to me that it's you and me in this season. And there was a time where I was like, God, we still in this season? Like, it's still you and me. There's nobody else. Is there a companion? You plan on sending somebody? But yeah, it was just, I think it's just time that you need to have with God. And I'm serious. I'm like, gosh, God, it's still me and you in this season. And that was so funny. So funny to me. He's like, yeah, it's still me and you. I have not released you yet. So yeah, that's how I got through. And now even still, I make time when I go to the gym. I still have that time to God. I make time to have some mental clarity. So I still carve 2 hours out of my day to go to the gym and still be able to spend that time with God. Just clear my head, have that focused time, and just talk about to God what I need, what's going on, that type of stuff, how I'm feeling. And if I'm not okay, I'm like, hey, God, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
I need you to be here with me. Like, I need to hear from you, you know, that type of stuff. Because a lot of times we feel like God's not present, or he really is. And it's amazing. You'll start to see that, gosh, God is really here with me. He really is.
Yeah,
Definitely.
you're right.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, don't just make sure you take that time out and process what you're going through, and you know what I'm saying, just focus on you and where, and make sure you ask God where it is that he wants you to go next.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. But again, girl, thank you so very much for coming on. And I'm not going to hold you up. This has been a great conversation. And hopefully it's a blessing to someone else. I feel like we poured everything out on the table, and hopefully people will get whatever it is that they need to get from it.
Yep. Me too. Thank you.
This episode is sponsored by the Twindle Foundation. The Twindle Foundation is a nonprofit organization dedicated to changing the wealth gap of African Americans and minorities by increasing homeownership. Did you know that 44% of Black families own their home compared to 73% of white families? A barrier to minority homeownership is student loan debt. Through scholarship, the Twindle Foundation is providing minority students with an opportunity to take on less financial debt. To give to the Twindle Foundation, visit www.twindlefoundation.org.